talking about your film. It's such a wonderful movie. It brings that period to life so vividly. So I wanted to start by asking about how much of this is from your own memory. I understand that you had a personal connection to the family.
Yeah. Well, first, it's an honor to be talking to you, and
Oh, thank
um,
you.
I I think that this is by far my most personal film because, as you said, I knew the family at the heart of I'm Still Here. I spent part of my youth in the house at the center of the film. In fact, 2.5 years. I when I was 13, I was introduced to the kids in the house, and I
Mm,
spent, from until 14 and a half to the day where the father was taken away, I spent in that family. So to get back to it, is the result of a long process in which I needed to feel authorized to bring that house back to life, to reopen that house in
yeah.
ways. And the book written by the younger son, by 𝙀𝙊𝙀𝙍𝙀, was fundamental in that. The first part of the film has a lot to do with my memories of that house,
Yeah.
the 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 life that pulsated in it, the intimacy of that family, the light coming from the windows that were constantly opened, and the door that didn't have a lock.
So what were you doing there? Did your parents or family know them, or what was your connection?
My parents knew them, but my connection was through a mutual friend that
Mm.
led me there. And obviously that house was way more interesting than my own house. And so I think that we all drifted there during the weekends. And what you had, I think, was in the microcosm of that family, you had the possibility to somehow visualize what that country could have been. So
Yeah.
for me, the film was really about uh, the, the a family that was robbed of that joy and of a future, but also of a whole country that was robbed of a future during the military dictatorship. You know, um,
Yeah, I mean, one thing that a number of these dictatorships that happened during the 1960s and 70s happened at times when there was so much vitality in the countries. Thinking of Czechoslovakia and other countries, and you capture that in this film, the music and there was a cinema movement and literature, and it was a very vibrant period. So
yeah,
how did it feel to have that being mixed
those
with this?
societies were reinventing themselves before the coup d'états happened. The coup d'état happened. And
Yeah.
somehow, um, I think that what happened in Prague has somehow a connection with what happened in Brazil, because
Mm,
these were countries that were trying to define themselves by their own aesthetical criteria, and
mm.
reinvent education, reinvent a form of economy that would be more generous, and more inclusive, and a culture that was bubbling, with new cinema, both, in all the countries you mentioned. And this was, actually, this vibrant possibility was eliminated by the oppressive regimes that popped up during the Cold War a little bit everywhere. And 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 suddenly one day I arrived in that house that is so vibrant at the beginning of the film, and it was closed, and the police was all around it, and we couldn't access it again. And to reopen that house now,
Mm.
uh, cinematically, was for me, both an honor and, I would say, something that took me a long time to get right,
Mm.
because the story spanned, through 40 years, to
Yeah.
to get the moments of the ellipses in the narrative, to construct something with the writers that could really hold the latitude of that story and all the possible layers of that story was something fundamental.
Yeah, I've read that the production took that it took a long time for the film to develop, and that you even started it. If correct me if I'm wrong, but before Bolsonaro was in power, so when we think of authoritarian leaders in Brazil, we think of him, but this started before that. Is that true?
No, you're right. We started the film thinking that we were going to offer a reflection of the past, and then suddenly the country shifted so rapidly, as many countries did, that we realized that we were doing a film, yes, about the past, but also a film that mirrored the present and eventually would actually inform people of questions or decisions that may be interesting or necessary for them to define what the future could be,
Yeah.
And what I think really made me do the film was the possibility to that combination of the personal story and the collective story of the country. The reconstruction of that family's memory has a lot to do with the reconstruction of Brazil's memory.
Yeah.
And always in cinema, when the personal and the collective blend, something really interesting comes out of that combination,
Yeah.
And the film is a result of that desire to embrace those two possibilities. And again, through the microcosm of family. And that microcosm of family somehow reflects the country as a whole.
And what was it like to recreate that world? You had a lot of archival material to draw from, in that the family themselves had photographs, and one of the daughters was always filming with I guess a Super 8 camera.
Yeah, there was so many registers of that life in that house, of the youth in that house. And actually more photographs than Super 8, actually.
Mm.
But on the filmic standpoint, the Super 8 transmitted the immediacy of that family much better, and this is why I embraced it.
Yeah.
I embraced the Super 8 as a way to actually allow for that authenticity, but also for accidents to happen. I trusted the actors with the Super 8 camera, so there's a lot of that is of that material that is really organically created by the family itself. And what I tried to do in this film was to invite the spectator to live with a family during the 2 hours of the film, as opposed to just recreating a family, a period family lost in time. There's a slight difference in doing that, in the sense that we weren't looking for a representation that had to do with theater or with a traditional reconstruction of a family on screen, but I was trying to find a livingness, in that family that had a lot to do with the process that we used. We rehearsed in that house, we lived in that house, we cooked in that house.
Yeah.
And when Marcelo, who wrote the book and who lived in the house, the real house, when he entered that house, he said, it smells like my old house. It smells like the house.
Oh, that's great. I know we don't have much time left, and I want to make sure that we talk about Fernanda Torres's amazing performance as the younger Eunice. And I did hear her in an interview say that it felt to her like the film was a documentary. It felt so real to her. But she, in addition to being a great actress, is also a writer, I guess a screenwriter. So what was the collaboration like?
I mean, to collaborate with somebody of Fernanda's sensibility and intelligence is a godsend.
Yeah.
He really elevated the film, and obliged us to actually be better than we normally are. So I see Fernanda really as a co-author of the film in her own right, you know. What her character does or did in real life, and what she did is she honed a form of resistance that is very specific. You know, when you confront tragedy, you either you either accept it, or you resist, and you create a form to combat it, you know. And this woman honed a form of resistance that is very unique, you know, um, because it ranges from quite devastation, you
Yeah.
know, to a fierce determination that is also restrained, and that creates something that is very hard to combat.
Yeah.
For the opposite. So she was, what Fernanda had to work with um, was, I would say, a frequency, a latitude that wasn't enormous to start with, but she made it enormous.
Mm.
You know, she truly relayed so much within that limited bandwidth that I wanted to work with, in honor to the real character.
Yeah.
A real character that was so restrained, but that was her strength. You know, there was something, the restraint came with the fact that something was constantly brewing inside of her, like a volcano that is ready to erupt, but never totally does, you know? And this is what I think keeps the film alive all the time, is the fact that she's always on the verge of exploding, but never does, you know? So
Yeah.
the spectator bonds with that impression and with that character. Um, and the humanity that comes out of of what I don't like to call a performance, but of her being in the film, um, really allows the film to echo and
Yeah.
to be embraced, in fact.
Yeah, and I think it's rare to have a film that focuses so much on the character, the people who are left behind, who are not the prisoners themselves, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. This for me was the most interesting aspect of it, because
Mm.
um, Brazilian cinema, South American cinema had, you know, did incredible films about resistance, you know, to oppressive
Right.
regimes, and but these are generally on the forefront of the battle. That is, you know, against the tanks and so forth. But how do you deal with loss inside the family? You know, how does that loss echo, you know, in the children's room,
Right.
in in
Yeah.
in the living room, you know, and how do you transcend that loss, which for me was very important. You know, I wanted this film to be life affirmative, because the real person was truly a testament of life, of affirming life. Yeah, she never bended to that regime, and she found a form of resistance that really allowed uh, the family to survive, but also the country to find a way back to democratization. You know,
Yeah.
it's so the this idea of reinvention that is at the heart of this character was so important, because even faced with tragedy, we can find a way out, you know. And this for me was very important in Brazil, in a moment where we think that we don't have a way out of anything, you know. And somehow this character brings light to a possibility, you know, and says, oh, maybe there's a way out.
Yeah. Just a quick final question, since I know we have to wrap up, but the film did get, is the Brazil official nominee for the Academy Award for International Feature. And it's always interesting to me when a country puts forth a film that, raises a lot of interesting questions about the history. It's a very candid and disturbing film in a lot of ways. So it just, if you could talk about just that, what that nomination means.
You know, there's an honesty at the heart of this family and the characters in it that we wanted to honor. And so we wanted, above everything else, we wanted to do an honest film. You know, an honest film about that period, an honest film about that family, and to honestly convey forms of resistance and forms of reinvention, you know. And so we're honored that this has been embraced, you know, by the Brazilian Film Academy, but also by the Brazilian public. You know, the film premiered this weekend, and to our surprise, it was the #1 film in Brazil during the weekend. You know,
That's great.
of the Marvel films.
You-
It's a complete surprise. We're a little bit flabbergasted here, but it may have to do with the fact that at the heart of the film there's the idea that you know, the human spirit is what keeps us alive. You know, it's the possibility of transcending loss, the possibility to reinventing ourselves even when we think that there's no way out.
Mm.
The possibility to do that through humanity, through affection, to the love of a family,
Yeah.
is something that I think we embraced and the public is embracing, you know, in Brazil, and I hope that it will echo in other latitudes, you know.
I'm sure it'll resonate around the world. So, well, the honor was mine to speak to you. So thank you so much for this.